Hi, welcome to Polyphonic Press. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
I'm John Van Dyke.
And today we're going to be talking about how there needs to be more guitar in rock. Here we go. All right, so this is an article on Billboard.com, and basically they're talking about how alternative rock radio, there needs to be more rock or more guitar in the rock radio, and it is something that I have noticed quite a bit. There's a lot of bands who are, they don't have a lot of guitar. They're more keyboard driven. There are guitars there, but they're more in the background. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just guitar groups kind of have faded into obscurity. There are a handful of really good guitar bands out there, like the Black Keys, and Queens of the Stone Age and Jack White. But even those bands, especially the Black Keys' most recent stuff, has a bit more of a pop edge to it. They've kind of pulled the guitars back a little bit. It's I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on your personal taste. But I think the guy has a point where there does need to be some guitar bands that are still holding what they call rock isn't really rock anymore.
No.
It's more pop. It's like, if you want to have that kind of music, that's fine. Just don't call it rock. I think Alice Cooper did an interview a couple of years ago or last year where he's talking about Mumford and Sons and how they were classified as a rock band, but they're not really a rock band. They have banjos and stuff and acoustic guitars. And I understand what he's talking about.
Yeah, well, like I said, I like a lot of the newer stuff, despite the fact it doesn't have the guitars. Like, I come from a guitar background, so normally I would seek out that sort of vein, but I've become far more open to a whole bunch of other things, and it is nice to give, like, a whole bunch of other instruments that people have largely ignored in pop music for forever, for 50 years at least, and giving him some love again. But it would be nice to see some, as you were saying, power pop bands sort of pop up again.
Yeah, that's what I was
Things
saying.
like the Knack and...
Yeah, that would be nice. Like, if there was a huge wave of really good power pop. Because a lot, like I said, a lot of bands like Arcade Fire, they have like 10 people in the band and they're all playing. It's starting to get really
orchestral.
too complicated.
It depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. But I mean, there's what I mean by that is there's too much going on at the same time. Whereas there's not really very many like straight ahead rock and roll bands who, like I said, there are a handful of them, but not really. It would be nice if there was like a Cheap Trick or a band like that around. I mean, you have bands like Sloan and Zeus, but they're not really on the they're sort of obscure. We know about because they're big in Canada, but not necessarily in the States or overseas or anything like that. So
and they don't stick to one genre either. They're very multifaceted.
That's one thing that we were talking about too. Is the article seems to want to pigeonhole a lot of these bands.
This is true. Yeah.
We were talking about the Jay Giles band back in the 70s, where they would play like blues, they would play rock, they would play R&B, they would play soul. It would be all in the same concert, and they wouldn't. They wouldn't even think twice. They wouldn't even think twice about switching genres.
Nope.
And that's what a rock and roll band had to do back in those days. You had to play songs like Shout and all these kinds of bands if you wanted to play at a party or something like that. And it's good for bands to explore different types of music because it builds your musical muscle, I think, playing in different styles. Whereas, a lot of like the hard...
You become a better musician overall, and your repertoire is better, and you can go off and do whatever direction you want to pick.
Yeah.
If you got a little bit of influence in there, you say, oh yeah, and especially if you... And listening to music. You'd be surprised. You find your favorite band, you find out what their music collection looks like.
Yeah.
You would be very surprised. Like, I've heard Jack White say on many occasions, actually not just Jack White, Gordie Johnson, the same thing, is that they don't, like, their guitar playing is not influenced by other guitar players so much.
Yeah.
As they like to take, well, in Gordie Johnson's case, he liked to listen to horn lines from, like, old jazz music from, like, the 20s and 30s and sort of do that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what Chuck Berry did.
Yes.
Took saxophone lines and put them on the guitar. And, Chuck Berry, in my opinion, is the most influential guitar player in rock and roll.
No question. No question.
So,
that's his thing.
But getting back to this, like, what I was going to say is bands like, if you look at alternative rock in the late 90s, you had bands like Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, and bands like that who were just playing that one style. Not that there's really anything wrong with that, but they were kind of put into a box and they didn't really get out of that box. So they kind of made it, this is our style and this is what we do and this is all we do. Whereas, bands before would explore different types of music and sort of do like a jazz song or maybe do a country song or something like that. I think, like I said, I think it's good for bands to work out different types of music. As far as guitar getting back into alternative, I think it's probably a needed thing, especially now because...
Well, there's definitely a hunger for it. If people start saying there's not enough guitar, then there's probably not enough guitar, even if you're okay with it not being...
Yeah.
Like, and I'm okay with, a certain aspect of it, but yes, I agree, it would be nice to have a few more good rockers on the radio.
Yeah, and just like...
It opens up the palette. It's just, you need the full range.
Yeah, just like if you, like, just the opposite, it can be true. If they say there's too much guitar, there's probably too much guitar.
Yeah.
To bring it back a little bit. So, I think, I see it as sort of a pendulum.
Exactly.
I think right now we're on the upswing of not much guitar, and I think it's just going to swing right back. So I think that's probably what's going to happen.
That's the primary reason why rock and roll will never die. It may die in some forms for at least a time.
Yeah.
But it always comes back in some form or another. That's what punk was all about. Was
grunge.
Rock going back to its roots.
Yeah.
Grunge, the same thing. Rock back to its roots.
Yeah.
And the garage revival of the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, let us know what you guys think. Do you think there needs to be more guitar, less guitar? Do you think it's okay right now? Do you like the sound of alternative indie music? Do you think there needs to be a bit of a change? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you know when we post new videos. You can check us out on Twitter and Facebook. Follow Jon on Twitter at Funky Dutch. And that's about it. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
I'm John Van Dyke.
Take it easy.